Nicholas Alexander Chavez plays Lyle Menendez in Netflix's Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. It was nominated for Best Limited Series at the Golden Globes. That's exciting. So the whole cast and crew has to be pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I think that everyone is just stoked. We put a lot of hard work into that show, and yeah, it was made with a lot of heart. So to feel it pay off in that way feels pretty cool.
What has this attention been like for you? Because you've been working for a while, but this really took you to a different level. I don't think like there was a couple months almost where I couldn't scroll through anything without seeing like a GIF or a meme with your face on it. So how are you dealing with becoming what people are calling the internet's new boyfriend?
It's very sweet. I think that like at the end of the day, like it's entertainment, right? And so people are going to enjoy it in the way that they see fit. But like for me as an artist, like I just want to stay centered in the fact that my job is to make really, really interesting things. I want to make great TV and great movies and give people something that they can be excited about when they come home and they want to turn on the TV with their family or when they're going out to see a movie. So like I'm more so focused on, what's going to be exciting, what's gonna be the next thing. Who am I as an artist? Like that's a more compelling thing to me as opposed to like all of the noise of it.
And the response to this show, it's made such an impact. I mean, not only was it a huge hit, but it really brought Lyle and Eric's case back into the limelight. And like now they're up for possible resentencing after being incarcerated for so long. Do you keep up with that or do you try to stay separate from that? Is that like difficult for you to keep commenting on things like a sensitive case like that?
It's not difficult to keep commenting on. What I'd say is this is that it's a really complex and nuanced case, and the show kind of takes a Rashomon approach to things where it shows so many different perspectives, right? And I think that was done intentionally to sort of reignite some of the feelings that people had about the case during a time when it was really hot. If anything, I feel like the brothers never really got a true second trial. You know what I mean? Because they didn't allow a lot of the evidence from the first trial to be admitted. So it kind of felt like we had the hung jury, and then the second trial, I don't know that that was um, a true evaluation of the brothers and what they went through. So I'm glad that it's going to have another day in court. I really am.
And you didn't meet Lyle personally. Is that an acting choice to like, did you not want that kind of influence?
You do sometimes have to play the way that other people perceive you, right? Because if we're telling it from someone else's perspective, then the behavior shifts slightly. But I do think that Lyle has um, his perspective shared in the show as well. Certainly in episode 4, and then again in episode 7. I mean, it's kind of littered throughout. We talked about it. It was definitely part of the discussion, when we first signed on for the project. And there was a desire to meet them. Um, and then, production basically voiced that they thought that it would be better if we kind of it didn't engage. Um, and then, post the project, it's done. You know what I mean? Like the footage is in the can already, and any statement that I would have to make about the brothers and my opinions of them are in many ways imbued in my performance, right? Like I think that art can't help but be political in many ways, right? Um, but any political statement that I have to make is in the performance itself.
And what was the most challenging part of bringing so many layers to this character? And as you said, you are telling so many different perspectives. That has to be both like interesting and a challenge as an actor.
Yeah, it really is. And it takes, taking your own ego out of it, right? Because of course, like as an artist, you develop your own perspective and your own point of view. And that sometimes doesn't always agree with what's showing up in the scene or the story that we're telling. But ultimately, life isn't black and white. It's a lot of gray area, right? And so we wanted to be conducive and accretive to um, what other people's perspectives were. You know, what was Dominic Dunn's perspective at the time? What was Jose's perspective? What was Kitty's perspective? Um, yeah.
And we've seen Chloe and Javier doing such great work for so many years. What was it like to have them play your parents? What did you learn from that experience?
They're just absolute legends, you know what I mean? They're so talented, and the way that they show up is just like they have a million amazing ideas. They're very creative individuals and impulsive in the best way. When I say impulsive, I mean like that they're constantly surprising you with the ideas that they're bringing to the scene, and every take is truly different, which as an actor gives you a million different things to work off of. You know what I mean? You it can sometimes feel difficult when you feel like you're doing the same scene over and over and over again, but we could do 100 takes and none of them would feel even like they were in the same ballpark. So like we were having a lot of fun. Um, Even though it was very difficult material, you know, like very hard days on set. Um, but still like the core of why you get into it as an actor, like you hope to have those sort of heartbreaking challenges, and you hope to have other actors around you who have ideas about how to approach that with specificity and nuance. um just yeah, they're extraordinary. And then this is to say nothing of like who they are as people outside of being terrific actors. And I would say this is one of the things that I really learned from Javier is like he's an incredible leader on set, and he really knows how to rally everyone. And you know, the crews, they pull such long days, you know what I mean? So like if you can show up with a positive attitude and be a team player, um, even when you're filming really difficult stuff, that's absolutely essential. So I mean, no, he set a great example in more ways than one, and so did Chloe.
And you got the four of you, the three of you and Cooper, of course, had such a great family dynamic. You know, right away in the early episode, that dinner scene where Kitty rips Lyle's hair off, that was a shocking moment to me. It was that moment I'm like, okay, this series is going to go places. What was the most interesting part of filming that family dynamic for you, and what surprised you the most?
That was the first day that we shot with Javier, which was a hell of a way to be dropped into it. Um, you know, I had set up the wig to be really symbolic for Lyle in terms of the mask that he wears and the kind of person that he presents himself as to the world. And one of the big questions that I had for myself playing that character is what happens when there is no mask? You know what I mean? What happens when you can't? What happens when you can no longer pretend to be something that you're not? And who is the person that is revealed? You know, so there's a revelatory experience that comes with the literal and metaphorical mask of that character being taken off. Um, and so that scene specifically ignites the conversations really between Eric and Lyle and all of the abuse that's been happening to them.
What was maybe the most difficult day on set for you? What was the biggest challenge throughout this process?
You know, I personally just have such a beautiful relationship with my family. And there's nothing that I wouldn't do for my brothers. I love them to absolute pieces. And so to put myself in an imaginary situation in which I felt protective over my brother and felt like I had to um, defend him and myself by any means necessary. There are a few confrontations that Lyle has with Jose that like our all of our hearts were just racing. Like it felt like like my heart simultaneously dropped into the pit of my stomach and then also wanted to lurch out of my body. Like it's just I can't explain the adrenaline of it and the pain of it, of that confrontation, because it's so multi-layered. You know what I mean? Like you're you want to defend the person who you love more than anything else, but you're defending it to the person who you have all of this like trauma and um, really just like a fucked up growing up experience with, and so getting into the nitty gritty of that and feeling all of that in the moment, it was quite difficult.
And through all of it, I mean, there are some light moments. That Lyle has a big personality, and he does add humor at times to some dark topics. Could you feel that when you were in it? Like, what was the most fun experience for you? What fun things could you take from his personality?
Some of the most fun moments are the moments in which he's the most unlikable. It's written dramaturgically, I think, to be that way. You mentioned that at times he can be quite funny. And that was really, really interesting for me to explore, right? And I'll come back to the mask here. Like sometimes like we find ourselves in moments of such like supreme inauthenticity that it is actually comical. You know what I mean? And it's also tragic. You know what I mean? Like they're very comedy and tragedy are so closely intertwined. It's almost the fact that he is this deeply, deeply wounded person who feels the need to behave as though he is his dad in many ways that sets him up for like an inauthentic experience of himself. Um, and so I think that it just takes you in a lot of different directions. But if I'm trying to pinpoint some of the more fun scenes, like that Hotel Bel Air stuff was a freaking riot.
Yes.
The shopping spree stuff was a riot. Um, it's sort of like the payoff of like feeling the mask at its most successful. You know what I mean? Like you spend so much time running away from being a hurt and traumatized boy that like for that small glimpse of time, like it actually feels like it's paying off and maybe it's working and maybe you can be who you think that you should be, you know?
And we've seen with Ryan Murphy before, once an actor gets into this world, he keeps bringing him back into this Ryan Murphy universe. And you were quickly on Grotesquerie in a wildly different role. So how was that experience?
It was really cool. I felt so flattered that Ryan wanted me to play another character in another one of his worlds. And he directed episode 3. And there's nothing quite like the privilege of being directed by Ryan Murphy. I mean, he's got such a unique take on so many things and also just like an encyclopedic knowledge of a great number of things. So when he's putting scenes together, he has a reference for almost anything. So to work with someone who has such like a high level of specificity on two different projects, you really can't help but grow as an artist. Just by listening to him and seeing what he has to say. But yeah, it was a great privilege to work on both of those projects this year. And he also has a way of collaborating and communicating and to make everyone feel very immersed and involved through every step of the process. Um, and also just the caliber of talent that he works with top to bottom from um, you know, camera ops to directors to writers to props to lighting. I mean, like it's the works, you know what I mean? And you know that like it's going to just be a stellar production.
And you won a daytime Emmy for General Hospital. What was that like for you when taking home that Emmy? I mean, that's a great welcome to the industry.
Yeah, it really was. That job taught me so many things. You know what I mean? It was my like ropes course into working in the entertainment industry, like 80-page days sometimes working on that show. It's very demanding, but I think that any time that you get affirmation from other people who do what you do and work in your field, that you're on the right track and you're creating art that's resonating with people, that feels really, really good. Like fundamentally, it just feels good.
And we're an awards website, so along with the daytime Emmy, I want to ask, what's the first award you ever remember winning in life for anything?
Um, wow. You know what? I think that I got an award at a summer camp for being the most truthful, which I think was just like a euphemistic way of saying I was really blunt. And I think I got that as a kid. I think I just told a lot of people exactly what I thought, which I think is a really funny. Oh, I haven't thought about that in forever. That's so funny.
And have you had time to keep up on the film side of thing this year? Are there any Oscar contenders that you're rooting for, or any movies that you've really loved seeing this year?
Yeah, of course. There are several. I think that The Substance is fantastic. I'm really rooting for that. Honora was phenomenal. I'm interested to see how everything plays out this year. We'll just have to see. But yeah, I have a great many films and filmmakers who I've been really really impressed with their work this year.
And bringing it back to monsters real quickly, I saw that you were able to take the leather Versace jackets. Have you worn it anywhere, or what has become of the jacket? Are there plans for it?
You know what? I keep trying to work it into like my daily life. Like I put it on my girlfriend Victoria last night to see if it went with her dress, and we decided it didn't go. But like I keep trying to find ways to sneak it into my life. I throw it on sometimes. It's a heavier jacket though, you know what I mean? So like I'm just now starting to get into like LA weather where it's starting to cool off and you can actually throw a heavier jacket on. So probably more opportunities to come.
And finally, people are very excited about the next chapter of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Can you say anything at all to keep the buzz going?
Oh yeah. Well, all I can say is that that is going to be a really, really fun movie. That I had a blast shooting that, and yeah, it's going to be a good time. I think that people will for sure enjoy themselves.
Had you seen the originals when you were younger?
You know what? I didn't watch the original until I heard about the job. But then as soon as I watched it, I was just like blown away by the performances, and I thought it was so fun. It's totally like so I never watched like slasher or horror, like any of that sort of like thriller kind of stuff. But my girlfriend is so into it. And so she's like put me on to game for all of these different movies that I never would have watched otherwise. And so it's really kind of like expanded my palette. And when I watched that movie, I was like, man, this is just such a good time. So yeah, no, I was happy to be a part of it.
Well, everyone's looking forward to it. And Monsters is currently streaming on Netflix. Grotesquerie is on Hulu. Congratulations, Nicholas, on some great work on both. And thanks for chatting with Gold Derby today.
Thanks so much, Denton. It was a pleasure to meet you.